I think you got to hire at the door with the right values. And they might be half-baked, right? But I'm not exaggerating when I say if I sense any pessimism in an interview, we don't hire the person.
Yeah.
And honestly, like, you got to get pretty good at interview questions. You know, like we're looking for people that they light up when they talk about challenges in life, right? Like they're like, oh, that was something that I overcame. Like that's exciting. They don't talk negative about previous employers at all. Like they don't say anything negative. They might say that, I would have changed this or I would have changed that, but they don't say, man, that place sucked. You know, those are optimistic people. They can look on the bright side. I think if you don't hire at the door, it's much harder to change that. These are people that obviously have been living lives, building careers themselves. They've been shaped in ways. I could go on to say lots of things about how I would continue to invest in those things, but I think hiring at the door is like incredibly important.
Welcome to the BetterCulture Podcast, where we make the clear connection between better culture and better business. This podcast is for leaders who want to build stronger teams, drive thriving companies, and enjoy your leadership role along the way. Now here's your host, Brett Hoogeveen, a leadership and culture aficionado, keynote speaker, and co-founder of BetterCulture.
Today's guest is Rick Knudtson, co-founder and CEO of Workshop, an internal communications platform helping organizations better connect, align, and actually execute. Rick is a seasoned entrepreneur and product leader based right here in Omaha, Nebraska. Before Workshop, he co-founded Flywheel, one of the fastest growing WordPress hosting companies in the country, leading it through rapid growth and a successful acquisition by WP Engine. What makes Rick especially relevant for this conversation is his belief that communication isn't just a function, it's a performance driver for businesses. Through Workshop, he's helping organizations close the gap between what leaders say matters and what actually shows up in how teams operate every day. Because culture isn't shaped just by what gets communicated, but by what employees actually hear, understand, and apply. Rick, thanks for being here. Welcome to the show.
Awesome. It's great to be here. Also, that intro. I'm going to bring you along to intro me anywhere. This is awesome.
Yeah. Well, my wife listens to the Kelsey Brothers podcast.
Oh, there you go.
Whatever Jason, she says I'm not doing nearly what Jason Kelsey does for the intro to his guests,
you got to hype people up.
I know. So there's levels to this thing. So.
It's pretty good. It's pretty good.
Good deal. Hey, what's the story? Would you mind just starting a little bit with what's the story behind Workshop? What do you guys do? What problems do you solve in the world?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So Workshop is a communication platform. We help really big companies reach their employees in whatever channel makes the most sense for that employee. So we work in email, we work in frontline communications, we do text messaging. It might be connecting to their intranet and posting content there. And what our platform does is bring all of these channels together, allow them to kind of orchestrate the communication, build the narrative, a campaign that's cross-channel, cross-geographies, and hopefully align their teams. And we also try our best to make communication in these big companies everybody's job. So it's a collaborative platform where, there might be a department in a 100,000 employee company that's bigger than most companies, and communicating to that department is just as challenging. So we love to see companies also get all of their communicators in the platform so they can collaborate and really understand, like, what are we actually communicating to employees and how is it actually resonating?
Yeah. So you and I have known each other for a while, and I had to admit to you, I don't know, a month ago when we chatted about doing this, like I kind of understand what Workshop does, but I didn't really understand the problem that you're solving, right?
Yeah.
For these big organizations, and just what a challenge it is to just effectively communicate, to have some sense of what people are hearing.
Yep.
So can you go just a little deeper for folks that maybe don't live in the corporate communication space? Like, what was the old system and why wasn't it working, and why is what Workshop is doing so much better?
And I'd love to just give the backstory too on like how we even got to the point where we decided to start a software company to solve the problem.
For
right? Sure,
yeah. Give us the story there.
Yeah, so you kind of mentioned in the intro that I co-founded a company called Flywheel. That was 14 years ago now, by the way. Wow. We were just talking about how we're getting old. So 14 years ago. And my background's in software development. I was a web designer at the time, which is why we kind of built a platform to help other creative agencies and freelance designers better work with their clients. Really, it was like solving our own problem in a lot of ways. And it was a lot of fun to build in that market because those businesses are really hard to run. Like these creative agencies are hard to scale. There's very low margin. It's just hard, right? You're selling billable hours. So our goal was to help those companies build scalable businesses with our platform. Now that company was a venture-backed business, so we were under a lot of pressure. We scaled very fast, from just my founding team to about 200 employees in 6 or 7 years. So our passion for the market kind of shifted to like, how do you build culture at a company that's changing so frequently and so quickly and growing so fast? And I would say at the time we didn't really know that it was internal communications that we were doing. We were just kind of like doing what the business demanded of us, and that became kind of our passion. Towards the end of that journey was just like, how do you build great teams and culture? And we built this belief that it really was centered around internal comms. And then, as you mentioned, we sold that company, and then I worked in a company of about 1,200 employees at the time, and I worked at the acquiring company for a little over a year, and got to see it at a different scale and how they communicated to their teams, and they had a pretty amazing culture as well, and they leaned pretty heavily into comms. And then that was 2019, and then COVID happened about 6 months after we sold the business, and only 1 month after we decided to integrate the businesses. So you can imagine how challenging of a time that was for these two companies being mashed together, going fully remote, and trying to understand what's happening in the world. And it further highlighted the need for digital comms. And I even watched a team at the acquiring company go out and acquire a product to try to help bridge that gap, right? So seeing that from a distance, and then the passion that I personally had around how effective comms can drive culture, spurred the idea of like, maybe there's a better way in the modern world, because so many teams were still using email out of Outlook, just with blindly sending it out and not getting any data back on how things are performing.
Wait, there's something better than just mass emails to all employees?
It's pretty amazing.
If I was doing internal comms for a big company, I think that'd be the only tool I would be aware of.
Yeah, it's exactly right. So 60% of our customers still only send out an Outlook. So they don't really have a tool that they can use to measure the results, to really understand who they're targeting, to segment communications, to personalize communications, to do all the things that, frankly, like marketing teams have been doing for a long time to reach prospects.
Yeah.
We're bringing a lot of those tenets into these businesses to say, like, how do you build way better stories? And a lot of that is a lot of that's possible because of the tool set. So it's like, let's segment the comms, let's personalize them, let's reach the geographies that you want to and tell that story differently than maybe over in this this team. So
you guys really found a lack of sophistication in a lot of the externally oriented marketing tools, approaches that businesses have understood for some amount of time, and they just don't have anything like that to communicate internally. Is that sort of the problem you're solving?
Right. That's exactly right. So yeah, that was kind of the genesis of the beginning of the company, and we founded the company in late 2020, and we've been at it ever since.
Well, I hear things are going well.
It is, yeah.
I hear that the companies are saying, yes, this is a problem that we need solved, right?
Yeah.
And I also heard you say something that I actually wrote down in the conversation that we had a month ago. And you said communications, or comms, is the foundation of engagement.
Yeah.
And that kind of sat with me because we do a lot at BetterCulture, and our niche tends to be small to medium-sized businesses, not large corporations, right? And when you think about culture, employee engagement, all the things we focus on the BetterCulture side, with scale has to come big challenges with how do you engage those people, right? And as you get larger, that centralized sort of communications plan and toolkit plays a bigger and bigger role. Would you agree?
100%. Yeah. And I think that the idea that it's central to comms comes from this idea that anything that you're doing in life, if you're highly engaged with it, it's probably because you believe it has high impact and there's a lot of purpose to the work, right? So we think about it through that lens, which is, if I work at a big company, I want to get as connected to the mission and kind of the goal of the organization as possible. And the only way to do that is to effectively inspire your employees that what they're building matters, right? So that's kind of what we mean by that. And we actually go through this very, very simple framework with a lot of our customers around, like, where are they at on the journey of comms? And most companies are are kind of like just informing teams. They're like, hey, this is happening over here, this is happening. And it might be watered down because they're sending one message to the entire company in the same way, in the same format, when you know that individuals in this team over here working on this project probably have a very different perspective and maybe even care about different things than this team over here working in this department and maybe even in this different country, right? So what we do is help them go from just simply like pushing out these messages to how do we personalize them and make them more impactful for individuals based off of what they care about? And that creates this alignment between these teams because they understand like the real why behind a lot of the work, even if they aren't working on the projects. And a lot of that stuff creates the alignment even on like, can I help that team? Can I build something better because now I understand what they're doing and it's actually related to the work over here? I think that creates the purpose because anyone that's worked on a team where you rely on each other, like that's way more enjoyable. That creates a lot of like impact in work. And really it's only possible if you like start with like the foundation of, okay, we have to communicate these ideas in a way that people understand why they get up in the morning and go to work.
Yeah. Do any more specific client, either stories or circumstances come to mind, whether that was either something a company was doing that wasn't working, or something that they've implemented that really is like has made a big difference, or results that they've seen? Any stories come to mind just to help people understand? Yeah,
for sure. I think that since we're in Omaha, I mean, a lot of people that listen to this might be in the region and know the company Huddle. They're an early customer of ours. Now we work with companies all over the world, but Huddle's been fun because they've been kind of a partner, and as we've built the product, and if you know Huddle, they have a strategy where they acquire a bunch of companies over the years, and they're all over the world, right? So you can imagine the culture in these companies that they're acquiring are very different than maybe the culture in Lincoln, Nebraska, right? So watching them use the tool to segment comms to really kind of speak to the geography that a lot of their employees are at. And what they care about and how it might be different than like what those on the ground in Lincoln, Nebraska care about is like such a good example of why personalization, segmentation, and really understanding like how to speak to individuals, not teams, it has been fun to watch. And I think that's true for a lot of our customers because most of them are international businesses, so they have not only the challenge of like whatever's happening on site at HQ, but it's like how do we communicate these things across the globe? And that's kind of what the product like supports doing. The other thing that's fun to watch though, more broadly, is again, most of our customers don't have a tool. In every core business function in most companies, there's some product that the company really, the team really relies on. In internal comms, not the case really, right? So really watching people go from 0 to 1 and understanding like this major unlock is always fun, right? And that's most of our customers.
Well, from a leadership and a culture perspective, I would say a challenge that I've seen many organizations struggle with is realizing that obviously employees need information about their business. They need to know what's happening, why it's happening, and they want to feel like they have a voice, that there's conversations happening around decisions that impact them. And in most organizations that I've worked with, Rick, the only effective way to make that happen is to put a massive amount of responsibility on frontline leaders or mid-level leaders to talk, to share, right? Because you can't take all the information and blast it to everybody, right? It has to get filtered. And what that means is leaders have a big responsibility for saying, hey, here's what's changing. Here's how it's going to impact us. Here's things I want your opinion on. Here's a couple things we might be able to have some input on, but et cetera. And leaders struggle to filter the information themselves. They struggle to make the time to regularly communicate, et cetera. How do, with a product like yours, are division level leaders able to, I get corporate comms and I think I get the frontline employee level. Talk to me about leadership and how they, fit in.
I think you're correct. We call it cascading of information, right? Yeah. It's like I get this top level message, but again, if I'm going to get it down to the leads of the organization, it's going to go through a bunch of filters and a bunch of maybe leaders of departments and teams, et cetera. So you're actually highlighting why centralizing comms is so important, because I need to know as a leader trying to build some narrative, what is actually being delivered to my teams to then communicate to their teams,
Yes.
And that's exactly what our platform does for most of these organizations. Is they have kind of this central nervous system of comms now. We call it the operating system, if you will. So I can see, in our platform, you might have performance reviews coming up. I don't know. Yeah. And of course, you want your employees to be not worried about those things. It could be anxiety inducing. So you want your managers to communicate those things well. So we see, just as an example, here's an email that's going out to the managers, department heads, just about how to communicate the value of performance reviews. So it becomes kind of this very strategic tool to cascade information in the same way that it is used to kind of like maybe set the narrative for the executive team on goals for the year. But it definitely is like the core kind of operating system for all sorts of comms, whether it's cascading or wide kind of like narrative things.
Yeah, that's really cool. And I'm glad that you have identified this issue, and I'm glad it's working. So that's really cool. Thanks for sharing some examples of what Workshop does to help large organizations improve their communication and build culture, right? I'd love to also talk about Workshop inside the house.
For sure, yeah.
Your culture, your organization. You've been very successful at helping to found 2 tech company startups and get them to scale and get them to grow. And whenever I interact with somebody that works at formerly with Flywheel and now Workshop, like I just get this sense that they love what they're doing. They love the job. They love the culture. I know that you've created not just successful companies, but really unique and effective cultures. So I want to talk a little bit about that.
We properly bribe them. Like we just make sure out in the wild, that's what we do.
That's a good way to put it. I like it. Yeah. So, I mean, talk to me just a little bit about that. This talented, committed, growing team that you've been able to create, over 100 employees at Workshop now and growing. Mm-hmm. What does that take? What's your view on building a team? What's your view on internal culture, right? Talk to me a little bit about just your vision for building that type of a team. What's your approach? Yeah,
I think that it evolves as the company grows. I mean, if you think of like early stage startups, sub 20 employees, so much of it is the culture is really the values of those individuals, like kind of coming together to try to build something new, and it's inorganic, right? It's organic. And I think that where things get challenging is when it has to be more intentional. Mm-hmm. And it has to be something that you can communicate to a new hire about how we operate and how we think, what are our values. So I am, a firm believer that the core values are like kind of the bedrock of like culture. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of companies have values. They put them on the walls. They probably actually can't say them all, if you're asked on the spot.
Yes.
And I think that's true for a lot of companies. Now, one thing that I thought we did very intentionally and I loved at Workshop was we didn't write our values until a year into the business. Mm-hmm. And a lot of that was because the first 12 months of the company, we were around a table just trying to like solve problems and figure out things, and coming off a successful venture like Flywheel, I will say it was very humbling. Like one thing.
Starting over.
I forget how hard it is. And we worked for 12 months on kind of like building this first version of the product. We were told no 1,000 times. We had raised outside capital, and I was even contemplating like giving back the capital and saying, this is not working, Yeah. And we had this core team of about 6 or 7 of us that really were in the trenches, like building. And then we kind of had this aha moment at the end of that first year, and we sold. We had 10 customers sign up in a month. We're like, I think we're onto something. I think we have like what it takes to go into the next year and really invest in this idea. And we wrote the values then, because I think a lot of that like learned experience in the first 12 months really shaped like what we built and how the team thought and how we operated. And one example is one of our core values is listen to learn, and it's a simple idea that like, yes, people say the customer is always right. I really mean that. Like you don't have to overcomplicate things. They just tell you what to build, right? Yeah. If you leave an ego at the door, you can build really interesting things by just asking your customer, what do they want you to solve tomorrow? Mm-hmm. And let's not imagine that we have some novel, super creative, crazy idea that didn't exist before. They might just tell you exactly what to build. And that was something we learned in that first 12 months is to leave the egos at the door and just listen to customers. And then another core value of ours is we look on the bright side, which is this idea that we've all worked on teams where there's a pessimist in the room and they drag kind of the spirit and the vibe down a little bit. And really the idea of optimism is not that we're going to ignore problems. It's that we believe we can solve them, right?
Yeah.
And if you can get a bunch of people in the room that have that mindset, it's awesome for a startup culture because every day there's a new problem to solve, right? So we hire people that are incredibly optimistic, incredibly ambitious. Like they really want to build something special, and they self-select to do that. And then I think that the number one thing that we've learned over the years is you have to have that high bar at the door. I think that building companies for the last now almost 15 years, I think that I have a pretty short leash for any employee that drags the team down, and that's just protecting great people.
Yeah.
And we've done, I think, a good job at Workshop. So a lot of it's core values. And I really do think that's kind of the foundation of anything. And if you set them well and you really invest in them, good things happen.
Yeah. So how many, I'm not going to quiz you on all of them.
Yeah.
I know you'd nail them, but I'm not going to quiz you. So
I'm ready for the quiz.
How many do you have?
We have 5.
Five. Yeah. Okay. And as you think about those 5 values, the couple that you gave me, something I really like about those couple is they described a behavior, right? They weren't just idealistic. It was look on the bright side, right? Yeah. And the first one you said was?
That one was listen to learn.
Right. Listen to learn, right? It describes the way somebody shows up at work, the things that people do. And I see organizations, first, I love the idea that you waited 12 months to figure out what are the values that we actually need to build the business that we want, that serves our clients and our, I'm sure, internal team as well. Talk to me about that a little bit. Do you use your values as more external customer oriented, like here's the things we need to do to serve our customers, or no, here's the thing we need to do to build our internal culture, or is it both? Talk to me about that.
It's primarily internal culture.
Awesome.
And it really is, they are designed, as you kind of alluded to. I always think about values as like, if I'm sitting in a room and I'm approached with a problem, or I'm having a hard day, or whatever the case might be, I hope that I can look to the values to kind of like guide me through the maze a little bit. And that's what they're there for. The hope is that those things translate to really great customer output. If that makes sense. And create like awesome products and really the things that ultimately create value for customers. But it starts with internal teams, and that's what the values are there for.
Yeah. Would you mind hitting me with a couple more of them?
Yeah. We create great experiences. We're very focused on high quality products, things that we're proud of, right? We communicate with intent, which is obviously core to Workshop.
I would say that's pretty core,
personally, and I think that that's like an internal, external. We try to live up to kind of the stories that we tell ourselves. And the last one is we take action, which is, I think, the one that competes most with other things, right? Because if you have high quality bars, but you want to move really fast, those things become kind of fun conversations around like where do we cut that deck. But at a startup, and I say this in front of the company a lot, is like your only real advantage is speed. Like that's the only thing you have. Like you probably don't have the smartest people in the world. You probably don't have like the best technology yet. You probably don't even have a great product, but you do have the ability to move fast. So that's what that value is about.
I love that. So I don't know if this is a good question, a hard question, an easy question, but when you think about talent and you think about those values, if I gave you an A or B, okay, do you think you make more impact on building a culture that lives those values on who you hire and the screening process before hire, or after hire on helping people shape and live, to those values? Which, if you could only do one or the other, you either hire and then once they get there, it's kind of baked in, or I know I'm going to make you pick, or no, like we'll take people and we can shape them. Which is more important if you're trying to build a values oriented culture?
I love that question. I'm not allowed to say both, right? I think you got to hire at the door with the right values, and they might be half baked, right? But I'm not exaggerating when I say if I sense any pessimism in an interview, we don't hire the person.
Yeah.
And honestly, like you got to get pretty good at interview questions. Like we're looking for people that they light up when they talk about challenges in life, right? Like they're like, oh, that was something that I overcame. Like that's exciting. They don't talk negative about previous employers at all. Like they don't say anything negative. They might say that, I would have changed this or I would have changed that, but they don't say, man, that place sucked. You know, those are optimistic people. They can look on the bright side. I think if you don't hire at the door, it's much harder to change that. These are people that obviously have been living lives, building careers themselves. They've been shaped in ways. I could go on to say lots of things about how I would continue to invest in those things, but I think hiring at the door is like incredibly important.
I want to make sure people hear that, right? Because shaping culture, leading, communications, all the things that we can do on a regular daily basis, they make a difference. Mm-hmm. But if we overlook our interview and hiring processes, and if we overlook the other piece that you mentioned about protecting it, if somebody's not living the values, if we're not actually holding them accountable and having those conversations and finding a graceful way to exit them essentially from the organization, that we really limit how much we can get done with just, whoever showed up on Tuesday, right?
Absolutely. So, I will say that, obviously I went through years leadership development training years and years ago, and protecting A players is like kind of I would say it's one of the things that stuck with me the most. And a lot of that's really about that. It's like you let any of those things slide, someone gets in, it could change the dynamic of a team overnight. So it really is up to you to make sure that bar at the door is incredibly high.
Yeah. I mean, I have a lot of advice for what people could do to build great cultures, high performing teams, but it's hard to come up with something that's more important than protecting A players, protecting the right of your good people to work with other good people. If you're not attentive to that on the hire or the performance, you're not going to get, you're not going to get where you want to go.
Exactly.
So I love that. Okay. Any other thoughts separate from the core values? Any other thoughts about how people just describe the culture at Workshop?
Yeah. You should ask them. That's what I always say.
I know. Well, they're not here.
I'm going to tell you what I want them to say.
Good. Hopefully they're listening.
No, I think that Workshop has an incredibly transparent culture. I think early stage startups, again, I do think, and this is just because I've done it a handful of times, the culture does change a lot in the first 5 years if you're scaling fast, right? So what looked correct in year 1 or 2 probably doesn't look the same today. But transparency is one that I think you have to really invest in if you want to move fast. And what that means for us is there's really nothing off limits as far as problems that we need to solve or challenges we have in the business, or here's where our financial metrics are at, all sorts of things, because it creates faster decision loops, obviously.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think it's increasingly important the smaller the company is, because there's just no time. If you're an early startup and you have venture dollars in the bank, there's literally a cliff. It's called runway. It's how long can we go?
Running out of money,
Running out of money.
Yeah, we got to prove something. So
I really don't want to have to sugarcoat anything, because I want the people in the room to just go fix the problem.
Yeah.
And if you can hold on to that, I think that's super, super impactful at scale. How that looks might look a little different because the company's bigger, and you can't just because of communication, you can't just communicate the things in the same way. It doesn't really land necessarily to all teams in the same way. But I think that transparency is a core piece of our culture. And then a ton of autonomy. I often talk to our leaders, and I push people really hard. And I hope that our leadership team does too, because I think that most people can do more if you let them, and they just need to believe they can. And for that reason, I think we have a high level of autonomy in the business. And the only way that's possible, I think a lot of companies would say that too, is obviously you have so much autonomy, come work here. But you have to have incredibly clear vision on where we're going. And if you communicate those ideas, and it's all back to communication, hopefully you give people enough rope to go do the thing, and if they fail, that's cool. Just don't fail twice. That's kind of the thing. Let's learn from the mistake. But I want you to just do it. And you can only really do that if you build a culture of autonomy with clear direction. So, and then I've already mentioned that, I think that everybody at the company, we want to build something special. At the end of the day, I think that, no one wants to work on anything they're not proud of. And for that reason, if it doesn't feel right, we're not excited to put out in the world, we're not gonna do it. And I think if you can find people that have that personal quality bar, the output is just fun to watch, because over time, it's not the leadership team saying, hey, this isn't quite there yet. It's people a couple layers down, they're this is not good enough. And it's because yes, the culture demands it, but also as an individual, you care about the quality too. So hopefully those are some examples, I think, that people would probably speak to Workshop. And like I said, I'd encourage you to ask them.
Yeah, yeah. So a couple terms come to mind that are probably real terms. I don't know that they are.
Sure, yeah.
One of these, I'm pretty sure you'll say, oh yeah, that's a thing. The other, I might have just made up. But earlier in the conversation, I got the sense that one of your big priorities in building a tech startup, like product velocity, right? Mm-hmm. Figuring out what's the customer want and how fast can we move, right? Yep. That's really important, I would imagine. You're nodding, yes. All right. So one of the things that I imagine really supports that is learning velocity for your people, right? And so how much autonomy do they have? How clear are they on the vision? How willing are they to take action, right? To try things. You can fail once, just don't fail twice kind of thing. Would you say that's one of the things that drives ultimately that product velocity is how quickly are people willing to listen, to learn, to try, et cetera?
It's funny because I think, again, investing in culture, maybe I'll tell you a story about like that.
Yeah,
because
please.
I do firmly believe, so my background, I like building products. So like I try my best to spend half of my time still building products. It's like what I enjoy. Yeah. It may not be what I'm best at, but it's what I like doing. So selfishly, I guess. But so over the years, I've hired lots of engineers and product managers and designers and all those folks that would build the products, and you learn a lot. And I will say, like, as the company grows, the feedback loops get longer, mm-hmm. and it takes longer to get products out into market because of tons of things, right? It's like, well, there's too much process, or maybe we haven't set the tone at the door for a software engineer to realize that, like, no, you can just push the code. Like, you don't have to like just go do the thing. I put trust in you to do that. Yeah. So last summer, actually, we watched like product velocity kind of slowing down, and myself and my partner Ben, our CTO, and some of the engineering leadership sat down and was like, why is that? It's like, what's going on culturally that makes people slow down? And it was really just that we felt like we weren't setting employees up well to get a quick win, right?
Okay.
To get the confidence building, so that they understand, like, oh, you can just push code and it's successful and customers are using it in the first 2 weeks, right? Let's do that. Let's build a process so that they can understand, like, yeah, I can do it. I can be a part of this team. I can create value.
Awesome.
And we reconfigured our hiring and onboarding strategy to do exactly that. And like, there's every engineer that we hire now, Ben and myself, my CTO, about 2 weeks into their tenure in the company, we sit down for an hour with them and just talk about like how we're totally cool with them pushing code. Yeah. Like, we're like, I know you probably like have heard this before, but I'm serious. Like, go do the thing. We trust you. You're going to be fine. You're smart. Like, you can do it. And it's really just setting the stage that we want that velocity to be core to the culture. Yeah. Now, back to the learning thing, I do think that there is an element of finding people that are curious and like are very interested in that. And I would say in today's world with AI, it's even more important that they are tinkerers. So we love people that have side projects. Yeah. I love the engineer that's a photographer, like it's a musician that does all of these things on the side.
Indications of curiosity, right? Of creativity.
Learning something always is something we hire for.
I love that. Okay, I think my last sort of significant question is I've always admired some of the sort of the rituals that you guys create, some of the things you do, right? So we talk about hiring and values and sort of the everyday. Are there some unique things that you found effective in helping to build and maintain culture inside of Workshop?
Yes, we do a handful of things. I will say that I try not to overcomplicate it, because I think that there could be like lots of weird like little things that we think like create value. And I will say one thing that I hear a lot from early stage founders, because I provide advice or like hang out and talk about building companies together. And a lot of the challenge that early stage companies have is like, again, how do I align the teams? It feels like people are like kind of moving slow. And again, that's might be the only advantage, is like you got to move fast when you're an early stage company. And I always ask the question is like, when's the last time you did an all hands, right? Or a town hall or like a full company meeting where you got everybody in the room and just like talked, right? Yeah. And it's surprising to me that people might say, yeah, last month, or it might have been a few months ago. So we do a weekly all hands every Tuesday. We've done it every week since the company's history. It's a major ritual for us. And it's the one moment where you slow down and you get in front of the company and you can get on a soapbox and talk about what matters, right? Yeah. And it used to be just me. It's like my time to like just explain to them why I care about these things. And then of course now it's like the leadership level and managers and really, and that still is I think the core of like, how do we communicate ideas? That's still the main piece. And we do other things too. We do quarterly offsites where we bring, we brought this from Flywheel. We would bring the company outside of the office walls for a couple of days every quarter. slow down to kind of speed up is how we describe it. And obviously, if you think about it from a dollars and cents standpoint or time, it's like really hard for people to be like,
Yes.
let's just walk away for 2 days.
Yes.
But I think it's so impactful. I mean, I think that the energy that people have getting back in the office once they are kind of like aligned again is palpable. And like that's why we do those things. And we actually have one next week I'm super excited about.
Someday I'd love to do a research study or find out information. You know, forever, one of the concepts we've taught people is like, stop to celebrate, stop to, like slowing down to celebrate something or to do something social, something offsite, something learning oriented, that accelerates momentum, right?
So much so.
But organizations, they struggle to figure out like to believe that, I think, right? And I don't know the perfect, quarterly might be the right cadence, monthly might be the right cadence, weekly might be the right cadence for certain things. But there are some organizations that just, boy, we're behind. We're not quite where we want to be. Like we gotta just nose to the grindstone, like go. And I can't promise it, but with high confidence, I say, I think you got to pause a little bit. You got to create some of those rituals, some of those moments to slow down.
I struggle with it myself. We have one of the biggest product releases that we've ever done going out in less than 30 days, right? Yeah. So we have teams like in the thick of it right now, getting this stuff polished up. And next week we're slowing down. It's basically a week off, right? Yeah. It's like, obviously we're learning and growing, and it's next week actually is very focused on development. So it's almost employee led. So we're doing a bunch of like learning and kind of workshops. But I had a moment myself where I was like, oh, the timing of this one's real.
Yes.
It's tough, right? But to your point, I think when you get back in the office, and I know this, I've seen it so many times, like the energy level and the excitement around like the future makes up for all of that lost time that you thought you lost along the way. So I feel it too. I know it's hard, but it's something that's non-negotiable. We take the time.
Awesome. Well, my final question for you, it's a two-parter. Take it whatever direction you want. Number one is anything you'd like to say, anybody listen, talent you're looking to hire, and are you guys hiring, et cetera, and any other closing comments, Rick?
Is this when I look at the camera? And
no, you do whatever you want here. I don't know.
We are hiring. We have, I think I found out yesterday we have more open roles than ever before at the company. So always looking for really talented people, and that's sales, software engineering, all over the company. So I think there's probably a role that would match skill sets for those that are listening. So I'd love to hear from anyone that's looking to join a fast growing company, doing cool stuff. And now at closing remarks, I don't know. I think that one thing that I think is kind of fun to highlight is that, I think workshops like a cool example for like a tech startup in Omaha. But when I was leaving school, I was always wondering if like, is it possible to build a tech company in Omaha?
Yeah.
And I would say that at the end of the day, I was inspired by, companies like Huddle or Buildertrend or other, tech companies in the space. And my only, I guess, plea to anyone in our community is like, it's possible here. Like you can do it.
Yes.
You just kind of have to commit, and there's just different problems that are presented by building a tech company in the Midwest, but you're just choosing which hard do you want. Like you're going to go compete in the Valley and build it, or are you going to, build something special here? And I'm pretty proud of what we're doing.
Yeah, well, that's a great way to end it. And I'll just say thanks for building such great companies here. I mean, they are, I think, they're good for the economy. They're good for people. They provide all sorts of opportunity. But if you're not aware of the things that are happening at companies like Workshop, you should check it out, because it really is. It's great to see some of these tech startups in the Midwest being so successful. So thanks for all the work on it.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
All right. Take care. That's been a wrap. Another really great episode. Great episode of the Better Culture Podcast. Thanks for being here. We'll check you out next time. Before we wrap up, I want to share something exciting. For the first time ever, Better Culture has launched a virtual leadership academy, a 12-month experience for leaders and managers who are serious about expanding their leadership skills, impact, and influence. Whether you're investing in yourself or a team of managers, this program was built for you. If you're serious about building something better, this is your next step. Learn more at betterculture.com/academy.